for a very generous introduction. And also I want to express my thanks to JWF for giving me this opportunity, and In Dialogue India for facilitating this opportunity. So thank you for inviting me. Also for an issue which concerns us all, which I'm going to address at the moment. But before I say anything, it's a very happy day for Indian women. So I want to bring that message to you and share it with you. The happy day because there was a fight, a struggle. Women's lives are full of struggle. But this struggle was for getting women political power. And we have been of the belief that unless women are sitting at the table half and half, 50%, I don't think we would be at the moment really feeling bad, sad. And that's my second news that I'm going to share with you. So today, while I'm talking to you, Parliament of India and a bill that was being fought for to be passed by Parliament for 27 years is being passed because Prime Minister Modi proposed it, and 554 members, that is the whole House, barring just 2 members, they only opposed it and everybody else accepted. So today we have 33% seats reserved in India's Parliament for women. So you can see, and I'm sure, this is going to make the whole difference. Now, that's where I want to bring in this whole gender disaggregated data and power of this data, or power of any data for that matter. I'm going to talk to you about that. But the sad news is that we have not been able to achieve even 1/5 of what we set out to achieve 7 years back. So what really went wrong? Pandemic? Yes. This was a big disruption. But responsibility of the states? No. I don't think we can blame everything that went wrong because of pandemic. It went wrong because most of the countries did not muster the political will and courage and put their resources in the place that they should have put for achieving the SDGs. So it's extremely important that we should look at what happens when we do have the correct, accurate, scientifically generated information and data. Now, why it is that when we talk about gender equality and when we talk about what we achieved, I think it's important to look at this data. It's not only that 70% of the countries don't know what is the status of women's gainful employment. They don't know, 70% countries. And then 40% countries are not aware of land rights or land ownership of women. I mean, I can go on and on talking to you about how many countries really actually reported when SDG data was collated together. Anyway, whatever the report came, it's important to pay attention to that how many areas progress has been too slow. At the current rate, what will happen to women? What data came to us, if we are analyzing that data, then we are looking at estimated 300 years to end child marriage. 300 years it will take before we will eliminate our children to get married and get into the kind of, hell that they are at the moment after child marriage. 286 years to close gap in legal protection and remove discriminatory laws. I mean, we can do that. Every country can set up a committee, a board like, some of us did in India, to review the laws from the gender lens and from gender perspective and just delete them. We don't need so many laws. A lot of, laws which were a kind of, we inherited because we have been 200 years British colony. We didn't need those laws. And then still we continued with them for the past 75 years since independence. So I think that's something is achievable, is doable, and we could do it. 140 years for women to be represented equally in position of powers and leadership. So at least India has made some step towards that. We are able to do that. And 47 years to achieve equal representation in parliament. So what is missing here? I think what is missing here is political will of the nations to progress and to get women equal opportunity. Now, when we have the data, when we know exactly what has gone, then we know where what is going wrong. And then we can really tailor-make the strategies to really reach out and to be able to change that situation. If we have that informed data with us. If we don't have, then this is all like, either we are ignoring it or we don't want to do it as nations, or we are not really moving into informed advocacy. Now, going back to this example of our struggle, we had to build a whole data set in the country to, since independence till now, where are women in terms of power and decision making? And when we presented that data, that we started on the eve of independence, 75 years back, only 3% women. And today, after 75 years, only 14% women. So where are we in terms of women getting represented? How do you call it a democracy if women are not even sitting, equally to make all kinds of decisions? Are women only there to vote and to bring you to power? Just like to cook and put the food on the table? Is the role of women that? Or is it more than that? If it is more than that, then look at this data and see what's going wrong where. So I think that's where it's extremely important to go for all kinds of... so there is a huge data gap at the moment, whether you look at the education. So what happened post-pandemic? So many girls have dropped out of school and started, especially for the lower income group communities, they started working with the mothers. And so many girl children are never sent back to school because they continued pushed into earning that income because survival of the family, they lost jobs, they did not have enough resources to survive. So many of our countries, the girl children are still in that position. And also to top it all, since there is an issue of security of those children, in terms of physical security, in terms of sexual security, so what happens? They have been all pushed to child marriage. So data is escalating about child marriage. Dropout rate has gone up in the... Now we need to know this. We need to know how many percent. When we started working in districts which are gender critical districts in our country, Center for Social Research data said, that's my institution, we talked about it. Nobody was agreeing with this thing. They said, no, girls have dropped out. Yes, girls did not come to school, but they're all now back in the school. And we started looking at their rosters, and said that where is this one? Where is this girl? What is happening? So almost 20% girls have never gone back to school. It's a very high number for a country which has, decided to give right to education as constitutional guarantee. So that's one thing. When you have the data, you have informed policy. On the other side, you have informed advocacy. It's extremely important for all of us who are working in different kinds of fields, whether it is climate, whether it is peace. When we see this, that 17 trillion, whose money is this anyway? Governments are spending on all kinds of, war and arms and things like that. Who is giving this money? Who is making this hard work and paying taxes and all this money? So I think it's important to, if you have this data, then you can do more informed advocacy. And that is needed because we have to all go back after this SDG news, which is very shocking here, that we have not been able to achieve more than 15%, to go back and start working. So we need much more gender disaggregated data. The other thing is there is a power of data. If people know what's happening, then there is not only sensitization and advocacy that happens, but also that policy makers are helped to design correct policies. They're able to design correct intervention. And then, of course, impact assessment is extremely important. One UN initiative was to start gender budgeting in all our countries. I don't know how many countries really finally adopted it, but India did. And when we do gender budgeting, then every budget, every penny spent will have to be seen from the perspective of who it is benefiting finally. Is it benefiting the poor? Is it only poor men? Or is it also reaching out to the women? and how women are getting benefited. So that's extremely important, why we should have the gender disaggregated. So what is the problem? Why are we not able to get this gender disaggregated data? I think there are 4 or 5 issues here. Very important issue is that we do not have the kind of understanding, or you can say the index, or you can say scale on which we are able to collect that data. So a lot of our data collection machinery is not equipped with that. And just to give you one example, we started talking about women-headed households. Everybody in the government said, what do you mean by women-headed households, you know? Our data doesn't show anywhere that women head households. It's only men. They are the farmers. Women are not the farmers. And effectively, 70% agriculture is handled by women only. You know, whether men are working, gone out of their homes and working in different cities because of the migration and migrant labor, women get left behind with children to make all the decisions, whether it is agriculture, whether it is health, whether it is education. They are. So who's heading that household? It's women. But it took years for us to convince our census data collection, which happens once in 10 years. And because of COVID disruption, we have not been able to do that, the data which we were supposed to collect in 21. So finally, this was accepted as an area where our enumerators will go and ask, not say who's head of the household, because women are used to saying, he's the head of the household. He's not here. He's in Bombay, he's in Kanpur or wherever in the country, but he's the head of the household. How many women really think, even if they are the main providers, even if they are the first providers in the house, they don't consider themselves as head of the household. So I think then women-headed households were included in our census as one of the categories for data enumeration. So that's something also is driven by cultural, social understanding of how we collect our data. Now the other thing which is very important is resources. To get extensive data collection, you need resources. You know, it's not possible. We are making a lot of conjectures. We are making a lot of observational calculations. And that's not something which is going to lead to the real good, solid understanding. Yeah, I understand. There's only 2 minutes for me. So I feel that, so that's very, very important to understand that that kind of a data collection is, so many things that are there where we need to invest in data infrastructure. So my call to action in 2 minutes is that let's invest in real, genuine data infrastructure. Because without that, it's only blind game, you know. You're carrying your cards very close to your chest and you are throwing it blind. It may work, but it mostly will not work, let me tell you. And it is not working, and that is why only 15% in so many 7 years, and we are still not even 1/5 way. Now, standardization is extremely important because data needs to be comparable. A lot of data was sent when we have been collating reports in the country. They're not comparables. You know, you can't compare, something like mango and, as you say, peaches or whatever. I mean, you have to have the similar kind of standard when you are looking at the data. And it has to be global. It has to be global so we get a good global picture of what is happening, because most of the low-income countries are suffering for these issues, and nothing much is moving because of resource crunch, debt crisis, war, economies have gone down after pandemic. So I think we need to really get into it and start getting the data. And also we have to take responsibility of capacity building of data collectors and enumerators. There is no way we can get right data unless they understand how to get. And of course, finally, the data dissemination. We have to have good forums, channels, lots of good research has been done, lots of good information has been generated, but a lot of people are ignorant about those facts and those kind of studies and researches. So I feel that it's important to conclude the urgency of increasing internationally comparable gender disaggregated data collection cannot be overstated. I want to again emphasize it. It's a call to action that demands the attention of commitment of governments, organizations, and individuals worldwide. By working together to close the data gap, we can take meaningful steps towards a more equitable and just world for genders. It's time to sound the alarm and take action. So I feel that's extremely important time. We are there. We have all the, and with AI now and the technology that we have in hand, there should not be any excuse for that. And the gender disaggregated data will tell you that we are sitting on climate negotiations, women are missing. One or two in the corner of the table. Nobody wants to hear them. When we are discussing peace, how many women, we were just talking about that, how many women, and I'm sure in your presentation, are in peace negotiations, really? How many women? So we joke about it, and please all men in this room don't feel bad when I'm going to say that. Men create war and women suffer. But we don't have any way to play a role to stop that war. But we want to ultimately, like we got women resident bill passed, we want to ultimately stop this war. Thank you.